This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. You've never heard of my guest this week. He's not in the media. He's not an academic. He has 180 Facebook friends, and he hasn't even finished college. He works an ordinary job in an ordinary town. But I asked him to be on the show because, as you'll see, he challenges me intellectually and emotionally as much as anyone I know. This is my interview with Jonathan Carp. So I grew up in Berkeley, and my parents both went to college, both went to graduate school. They went to elite universities. I think every adult I knew when I was growing up had the same background. Every single adult I knew growing up had gone to an elite college or university in the United States and had at least one degree. Almost every adult I knew was also what you would call an intellectual. They talked about politics, they talked about philosophical ideas, they talked about abstractions, they talked about high art. That was my world. Then I went to college, and of course, same thing, I was around these professors who, of course, had gone to college, elite places. And the students I was with were from more or less the kind of like families that I'd been from. They were from families where people were educated, had finished college, were likely to have had advanced degrees as well. And then I went to Columbia University. And of course, in Manhattan, on the Upper West Side, and at Columbia, everyone had advanced degrees from elite colleges and universities. So that was my world. And I guess, looking back on it now, I think that for me and most of us in my world, there was a common assumption that if you didn't have that background, if you hadn't been through an elite college or university, or just a college, you probably didn't have that much interesting to say about the big picture stuff. You probably weren't aware even of major questions that are political or philosophical. For us, I think this is fair to say, there was a common assumption that those people outside of that world were interesting only as sociological objects, that we were interested in you in terms of what you did and how you behaved and how you thought, but only in that you unfortunately populated the world we had to live in, and so we had to figure out a way to manage you, probably have to change your mind to comport with how we thought you should live. But as intellectuals, I don't remember anybody taking seriously anyone who hadn't been trained in the elite institutions. So what happened for me was when I published A Renegade History of the United States, it came out in 2010, and it was ignored by the New York Times. It was ignored by the Washington Post. It was ignored by the Nation magazine, Mother Jones. It was ignored by the New Republic. It was ignored by all of the academic journals. To this day, it has not received a single review from an academic journal or one of the mainstream elite media outlets. What happened was, though, that this was at the very moment when the entire media landscape was starting to change. It was sort of, you could just see this giant wheel just turning over. And you could see things like the New York Times, where previously, if you didn't get a good review in the New York Times, you were not going to have a career as an author. They were that important as gatekeepers. That all started to change right when my book came out in 2010. You could just see it turning, and you could see the whole industry, publishing, trying to figure this out. You know, where do we get reviewed? We've heard about these blogs. We've heard that people actually are reading them, but are people taking them seriously? Because they're written just by anybody. What happened for me was I was ignored by all of the mainstream institutions, but I got attention from the people that my people had previously thought of just as objects to be studied. And this was also happening when I had just gone onto Facebook. And so people started to come onto my Facebook page and tell me that they had read my book. People who I had never heard of, who were nobody. They weren't public intellectuals, at least, you know, not in the formal sense. I mean, they had gone to maybe a state college for a couple of years, but they had read the book, they had understood it. And some of them didn't like it, didn't agree with it. Some of them really agreed with it. Some of them were just torn about it and confused and had questions. They had questions, and that's something I miss in academia, is asking big questions and then having real debates about it. So right after my book came out, I can't remember exactly how I found it, but I noticed, well, I was desperate for this book to get attention. So I was searching, I guess, the internet at the time for anyone to mention this book, and I found some little tiny microscopic blog that had a full review of my book, and was stunning because it the person who reviewed the book clearly had read pretty much every word and understood, it seemed to me, every word, every argument, and had processed it fully and was giving it back to the world in a new form, in his interpretation of my book. So he had taken my text and then remade it into another text, a new text. And that is to me the sort of the deepest form of analysis. And that's really where interpretation is so useful and so important. And it's really the mark of a true intellectual. So the person who wrote that review is sitting in front of me.
Hi, I'm an object to be studied. I'm here to be studied.
So this is Jonathan Carp, and you've never heard of him. And he doesn't work in the media. He's never been on television, as far as I know. Have you ever been on a podcast before?
I'd never been on a podcast. I was on local television.
For what?
Competing in the Quiz Bowl.
Uh-huh.
And I was haranguing Westboro Baptist Church once and was on TV for that, local TV. It was a good time.
Right. But you've never been a commentator.
No, nobody cares what I think.
Right. And so Jonathan and I became internet friends. You know, I think we became Facebook friends.
I actually created a Facebook because, like, I was so, like, isolated. I was the only person, well, I mean, my wife and a couple of my personal friends, but I wasn't plugged into, like, the larger world. And to me, you were like a person from on high, had, like, reached down and we're like, hey, you're interesting. Like, let's hear what you have to say. And I was like, my wife and I had never created Facebooks, and we were against them, but we didn't want to make one. And I was like, I'm going to make a Facebook. And she was like, no, don't. And I was like, no, Thaddeus Russell likes my blog, so I have to be online. Like, I have to capitalize on this somehow. So you are the reason I have a Facebook. You're the reason my wife has a Facebook.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah. It's my fault. So let's be honest. Let's be fair, or I should be fair. And you know, obviously, one of the reasons I liked you was not just that I thought you were brilliant, but also that, of course, you generally liked my book, as I recall. Right? It was a positive review.
Yeah, it was a positive review. Yeah.
So I'm not pretending that I'm just sort of a detached, disinterested intellectual here. But it was that you really got the ideas. So we became Facebook friends, and you started to comment, because I was talking about politics all the time on my Facebook page, and then you would comment, and you would show up regularly on my Facebook page, and you would say things that were so goddamn smart that I was just taken with you. And my Facebook page started to fill up as more and more people read my book and, became Facebook friends with me. And a lot of super smart people. And again, most of them were, nobodies in terms of academia or media. And the thing that I learned right then in that moment was something that has really changed my life, actually. My career, my way of thinking, what I'm doing for a living in some ways. I realized right then that those objects have a lot to say, that there are all around us renegade geniuses. There are. I mean that. And that's what I've been learning. That struck me in that year when that happened. So John, I thought was just about the smartest person on my Facebook page. And so I became more and more interested in him just because of his intelligence, and not just his intelligence, his knowledge. And within just a few months, it became clear to me that if he were to be in a debate with a typical Harvard professor, he would run circles around them. So then I found out that this guy, this nobody who was smart and had read a whole lot of books, also had a really interesting and unusual life. So let's start there. Let's start with where you grew up. Where are you from?
So I tell people I'm from Houma, Louisiana, because some of y'all might have heard of it. I'm actually from a little town called Gray outside of Houma, which is as close to like nowhere as you can be. Gray, it's a zip code. It has a name because it's a place, and you have to have a place for a name to deliver mail. I was actually born in Houston, but I moved to Houma as an infant. I was like 6 months old, so I grew up there. And I don't know, just spent my whole life. I moved into a house in Gray when I was 4 with my parents. I had the same bedroom until I was 17. And it was very, I don't know, it was almost kind of a vanished world sort of thing. Like, I don't know that there's anywhere that you can get the childhood that I had anymore. I'm kind of fortunate, in the things that happened to me. I grew up in a very tight-knit little community. We all went to the same parish church. We went to the same events, knew the same people. I spent my childhood running around in this forest and the swamp, like trying to catch alligators and then running away when they got mad, and just had a great time. It was a great place. I miss it. It's not really the same anymore.
Why do you think it's not the same anymore?
It got bigger. It just grew. I mean, it was growing then. Like our presence there was a sign that it was going to change. I'm not a Cajun, as you can probably tell by the sound of my voice. And my father moved there with a job in the oil field, which is why it was changing, why the town was growing and changing. And so, now it was like maybe 1,000 people in Gray. Now there's like 5,000. In Houma, when I was a kid, there was maybe 20,000 people. Now it's closer to 100,000. It's becoming more like the rest of America as the rest of America moves there, because there's work. Oil industry is cyclical. I'm going to say there's work there, and my Houma friends listening are going to scream and cuss because maybe there's not right now. I don't know. But at times there is a lot of work in Houma, and it draws people, and it changes a place.
So it's an oil town?
It is. It is an oil town. It was originally another Cajun. I'm going to use a word. The word is kunas. Kunas is a word for Cajun people that they use for themselves. It's not a racial slur. I dropped the word kunas once in Washington, and everybody looked at me like I just said the N-word, and I was no, wait, let me explain.
Coon and ass together?
Kunas. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what Cajuns call themselves, kunas.
So it's the ass of a coon?
I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
And it's not racial.
Well, it's not racial. Some Cajuns will try to like jump on the whole like I have an identity too, don't offend me thing, and claim that outsiders can't use the word kunas. And I'm an outsider. I'm not a Cajun. My family, the Cajun is a very specific identity, and I'm not one of them. But I don't know. It's what they call themselves. And
it was a largely Cajun town.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
Oil town, Cajun town. Mm-hmm. Your dad did work in the oil industry?
In the oil industry. He still does. He does. It's kind of funny. When I was a kid, I would ask my dad what he do for a living, and he would just start talking in all this technical language. And I don't know what that means, Dad, but what he does is he does life support systems for underwater construction, essentially. So they do work on the seabed to bring oil that makes all this possible, and he does the life support that keeps the divers under there alive while they're doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so he's actually in the scuba business.
No, it's different. It's called saturation diving. I don't want to get into technical details. I'll get them all wrong, but it's not scuba diving.
But it's okay. But it's about he's facilitating people diving deep underwater
And living there for like weeks at a time.
Living underwater
To work, because it's easier to send them down and like acclimate them and then let them work and then bring them up.
Wait a minute. Where are they living underwater?
In like a underwater habitat.
They build the habitat.
Yeah, they have like a bell, like a diving bell. Like I
didn't know they would live there for days and weeks and months at a time. Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're like astronauts underwater.
Kind of. The space program does this. The space program changes astronauts.
I didn't realize that it was. These places were inhabited.
Here's what's cool, right? I just told you about a job you never even imagined in a world that you might not even thought was possible. And the people who do it are just like redneck dudes. They're not highly trained. I mean, they are highly trained. They're underwater welders. That is a highly technical trade. But if you met one, you would just think like this is some like knuckle dragging redneck motherfucker.
It's one of my objects to study. Yeah, we're interested only in their behaviors, not in their ideas.
Yeah.
Except when their ideas veer from what's correct.
Except when they vote for Trump.
Yeah, exactly. So the workers generally are that type. They are just. Yeah. They're from rural Louisiana.
Yeah, it's a good job.
They don't have formal education.
No, well they'll have welding certificates.
Right.
I mean, you have to be trained. You can't just be like a dude and.
So they're highly trained. They have a formal training, sophisticated training in this particular occupation, but they've never read Shakespeare.
Right. They don't have any.
They don't know who Plato is.
Yeah. Right. They don't have any ideological training to be a good liberal. Like they don't know how to.
Well, they don't have ideological training in the formal higher education sense.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So your dad was the one who he was an engineer. He designed these systems?
I thought for a long time he was an electrical engineer. It turns out I talked to him recently about this. His degree is in industrial electricity, which is I guess different. But he's a very intelligent man. He's very accomplished.
Okay, hold on there, John.
Stuff.
So he's very intelligent, but what kind of intelligence?
I have never seen him stumped by a practical problem in my whole life.
Well, that's one, as you know, I'm sure you know, there's one particular kind of intelligence. I know that you are highly intelligent in various ways. And here I keep complimenting you, but it's true, goddammit. Everyone who's listening will soon find out. And I am. So there's this argument that's being made these days, especially, but I guess it's been made for a while about IQ. This is in the air again. We're debating IQ, and so Charles Murray's back in the news. Who made this thing infamous in the 1990s, and now he's being resurrected to be killed again, but then also people are trying to save him again. So in other words, that debate about the bell curve in the 1990s is back and it's alive. And I've been listening to podcasts recently in which he's interviewed or people are talking about him. And one of the claims that he makes about IQ is that those with high IQs have high aptitude in both verbal skills and math skills. Yeah. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I know it ain't true for me. Because I swear to God, I could never survive in any kind of advanced mathematics class. So you, though, I think it's clear you could, but that your IQ is very high in both.
Oh, I guess.
So, like, in other words, I think you could deconstruct a Shakespearean text, and you are actually an engineer now, right? So
yes.
you do this, but yeah. But your father, was he a reader the way you are?
He is a reader. It's just
Would he read fiction?
He reads history and fiction mainly.
Oh, he does read fiction.
Yeah, but it's
see, that's a great marker. That's a good way of dividing people off. And I think people who read fiction tend to have high emotional, what I would call, and what's often called high emotional intelligence, which is just a particular category that's invented, but it's meaningful within this world to me. And those who don't, like my father, who also was an engineer, by the way, very high intelligence in practical ways, right? So he was a computer programmer, way back in the day. Very scientific, and I would say scientistic, meaning that he believed that science essentially was, the proper religion, that it really was the path to truth, and what science said should be respected and adhered to, etc. But he never read a novel. And in fact, when we would go to movies, he would fall asleep because he literally couldn't follow the narrative. If it was fictional, he just didn't understand what was happening.
Yeah.
Why is that girl kissing that boy? Why is that police officer chasing that guy? Why did that guy just get shot by the so-and-so? So whatever that is, if it's Asperger's or somewhere on the spectrum or whatever, but he is like, he super smart in this one very particular way, quantitative reasoning in a particular kind of logic, but in the rest of the world of thinking, he was retarded. I mean, really, I mean that he was retarded. He had not developed past the infant stage. So, so here's my question: was your father like that? I guess not. Since he was reading fiction.
He was reading fiction, but I mean, my parents divorced when I was young. I was 7. My parents divorced.
Me too.
So he was around. But he would come in and it was like a special occasion, like Dad's here. So I don't have clear memories of living with my father. Even when I was little, he worked offshore a lot. So he was, in fact, when my parents divorced, one of the things my mother said to me is it'll be just like he's offshore all the time. So I don't know, but it wasn't, but Do
you know why they divorced?
No. I know their respective stories. I withhold judgment. They're both my parents. I love them both. I'm proud to be their son, and I'm not going to sit in judgment of their decisions.
No. I wasn't asking for that.
Yeah.
I was asking for an analysis.
Oh, I know that I know there were arguments about money, which is one of the number one causes of divorce. I know there were arguments about his work. I'm sure that my mother would probably say something like, "Oh, he was away all the time and all he cared about was money," and my father would probably say something like, "I don't know what he would say. Maybe she spent all the money, or maybe she threw." I've heard that she threw him out. I've heard he left. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I love my parents, and
like most people outside of a relationship, you don't know.
Yeah,
actually.
you don't.
We don't know. It's amazing how easily people make commentary on other people's intimate relationships, and you really just don't know unless you're inside of it.
Before I was married, I was obsessed with like what happened. Because it was like a key event in my life when my parents divorced. But now that I'm married, I understand, even if I knew all the events and everything what was said, I really wouldn't know what really happened, because things when you're in that kind of a marriage is a very intense and intimate relationship, and in that situation, things that look just batshit crazy from the outside may have a sort of internal logic to them. So I've given up on trying to comprehend why they made the decisions they made. They did. It happened. It's over.
Yeah. So your father so he read fiction. Would you say he had emotional intelligence, if that category means anything to you?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it does mean anything to me. I really think it's a matter of interest. Like, my dad has never really come off as super interested in people. He's interested in things. Yeah. He's interested
Which
in
is the classic division that social psychologists make.
But
men are interested in things and women are interested in relations.
And one of the things
relationships
that I've learned about my father, as I've been a father myself, is that he did always love me, but the way he showed love was to provide for me. He worked hard and provided opportunities and things for me, because that's what he wanted for me. And that's what I want for my children. I do it for them. I'm not an engineer because I just love math. I want to give my children opportunities and that kind of thing. So.
Oh, you don't love math?
No, I hate math. I failed high school algebra twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, once. But yeah, and my son's on his way to failing it soon. Next year, we're pretty. Well, I shouldn't say that, but it's dangerous waters for Russells when they go into a math class. You failed algebra 2 twice.
I failed algebra 1 once, and I failed algebra 2 once.
And why?
I just didn't give a shit. Like, I hated school.
So it had nothing to do with ability.
I don't think
Clearly.
so. I mean, you know, I got good grades in like calculus and stuff. Differential equations was a little rough, but I feel like if I'd given a damn, I could have probably done pretty well.
So just so people understand, John currently is in a program. You're now in school.
I'm graduating with a degree in civil engineering in 3 weeks.
Right, civil engineering. I would imagine there's some algebra in there.
Oh, there's algebra, calculus, trigonometry, differential equations, linear algebra.
And I would imagine you've done pretty well
I've done okay.
in those subjects. So it had nothing to do with ability. You're failing Algebra 2 in high school.
No.
So you didn't care. Why didn't you care?
It was just like a huge waste of time and a huge pain in my ass. And I don't know. It was just like, why am I doing this? Like I would sit in classes and almost all of my classes fell into one of two categories. Either I knew it all better than the teacher already, or I didn't give a shit about any of it because it was boring. I think math instruction, and this is way off topic for your podcast, but math instruction in the United States is particularly terrible.
It's not off topic at all. Why is it bad?
Because math is about order and logic, and they make it about memorizing stupid human tricks and learning how to do stupid things with math symbols that don't make any immediate sense.
When you say don't make immediate sense, do you mean they're not relevant to our lives?
Why do you want to factor a polynomial? Did anybody ever tell you?
That's the question I've always had. Why do you want to factor a polynomial?
Yeah.
I have no idea what that
can
means,
tell you-
but I know that I don't care. There I am, anti-intellectual Thad. It's coming out. When it comes to science, I do sort of get into anti-intellectual almost.
Well, I'm
almost.
supposed to be anti-science. I was in Mass on Sunday, so I hate
Oh
science.
yeah, we'll get to that. Don't ruin the punchlines, John. I'm the one running the show here. You just let me do that. Wow, I love that analysis of math instruction. God damn it, I hated math. Jesus Christ, I still do. I'm still angry about it.
If you had a good teacher,
Mr. Dunn Ruiz, if you're listening, yeah, I'm talking about you.
If you're a curious
11th grade
guy,
algebra 2, you, brother, Mr. Dunn Ruiz, Berkeley High School, you know who I'm talking about. Okay, sorry, John, go ahead.
You're a curious guy. You're a smart guy. If you had a motivation and a good teacher, you would love it. I promise.
No.
Okay.
No, you're wrong.
Well, you know.
you were objectively wrong. Really? You think
So
I would?
there is objective reality.
Only about that.
Okay.
Only about that. No, really? You think I would?
I do.
Huh.
I do.
People,
I did.
My students say that to me often because I always tell them, I have the lowest SAT scores in this room and I have the lowest GPA and I'm the only person here who failed math in high school. I'm sure when I would talk to my students at these, fancy colleges where I was teaching, and they didn't believe me, and then I'd finally convince them, and then they'd say, oh no, it's just, but you definitely have the ability to be good at math. I said, no, I really don't. I don't think I do.
You do.
I look at numbers. I look at numbers and I immediately forget them.
That's
a bad sign, isn't it?
You don't have the ability to be a trained number crunching muppet, which is what American mathematics instruction tries to create.
If you told me your phone number right now, I would forget it in 60 seconds.
Numbers are
I'm not kidding you.
Numbers are irrelevant in real math.
Whereas my ex-wife, if you told her your phone number, she would remember it for the rest of her life. I'm not kidding. She remembers phone numbers from when she was 7 years old. I'm not kidding you. And she's bad at math too. But there's something about numbers because they are meaningless to me.
Yeah.
They go right through my brain.
Right. And the trick is numbers are irrelevant in real math.
The only reason I passed math at all, I got through it, survived it, was baseball and statistics. I mean it. So I got good at arithmetic by crunching baseball statistiks. So I could do multiplication and division pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But only because I cared what Pete Rose's batting average was in July.
Yeah.
Saying
I'm bad at math because I don't like numbers is kind of like saying I'm bad at carpentry because I don't like hammers. Like they're a tool, but it's not really. It's about describing the physical world in a logical and orderly way.
All right. Don't you want to say? Well, you want to say making a description?
No, I don't.
Seriously?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
God, I don't want to go down this road.
I can build a.
Don't
bridge
make me
that
go down
won't
this
fall
road,
down.
John. Don't make me go down this road. People have been screaming at me for a week about objective reality. Oh no. All right, let's hold off.
Well,
on
you
that
got
for a
an
second.
engineer on your show. What did you think was going to happen?
I know, but you're smarter than that.
No.
Okay, so where did you get your egg-headedness?
So I got it from both sides of my family, and each side thinks I only got it from them. But my
They both claim credit or blame.
Yeah, both. Well, they blame. Both. Each side will say, "Well, he's smart because of our family, but he's a fuck up because of their family."
Where are they from, by the way?
My father's family. He was born in Fort Benning. He's an Army brat. His mother's people, Georgia. Yeah,
Army. Okay.
His mother's people. My paternal grandmother. They have been in this country since well before the revolution. They helped found the state of Tennessee, I recently learned.
Good for them.
Fought with my 8th grade or 9th great grandfather fought in the Creek Wars with Andrew Jackson.
Which side?
The Andrew Jackson, the side that won.
Yeah.
And they still live in Alabama, and Georgia. So
you don't want to claim Indian heritage because
no, I don't have any Indian
that's your
heritage.
opportunity.
No, I don't.
It gets you places.
No,
I'm just saying.
I'm white.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just white. But they were there for a very long time. Mm-hmm. His father was an army officer. They met when he was in our OCS, Officer Candidate School at Fort Benning. Got married. He was from Chicago, the son of his mother was the daughter of Irish immigrants, and his father, it's kind of a mystery because his grandfather, Maximilian Carp, after whom my son is named.
Maximilian.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was doing genealogical research recently, and Maximilian Carp just kind of snaps into existence in 1900. And he has a name, and he has an alleged background that you can't find any more records on.
Wait. There was someone named Maximilian Carp in the 19th century?
Yeah, he says his name is Maximilian Carp. He was born in 1879 in New York City, if you look at his census records, right? So, but if you look at like the 1890 census, he doesn't show up. If you look at the 1880 census, he doesn't show up. There is another Maximilian Carp, born in 1879 in New York City, who was a Jewish guy who lived his whole life in New York City. And so I was talking to my family, and my Aunt Penny said that she had heard that Maximilian Carp was in prison and was pardoned and released from prison because he saved people's lives in a fire. And then my mother told me that my father's mother told her once that Carp is not a real name. That Carp is not the family name, but she didn't know what it was. So,
you're saying you may have identified actual relatives in the 19th century.
Yeah, I did identify.
These Maximilian Carps
are real people.
Oh, these are people you're related to.
Yeah, Maximilian Carp is my great grandfather.
I thought you were just talking about the inspiration for your son's name. Or something.
No.
Oh, I see.
Maximilian Carp is my great grandfather.
Oh, I see. So you might be part Jew.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
I had 23andMe done. There's no Jewish heritage. What it looks like happened is Maximilian Carp stole somebody's identity and moved to Chicago under an assumed name. I don't know that for sure, but it's what it looks like.
Okay, so there's some Chicago lineage.
And then my mother's people are Polish and Irish, Pittsburgh. I want to say it was her parents or maybe her grandparents lived across the street, and they hated each other because the Polish didn't like the Irish and the Irish didn't like the Polish. And I guess my Polish relatives referred to my Irish relatives as pig shit Irish. And I don't know what my Irish relatives called my Polish relatives because I heard their side of the story. I'm sure they had their own slur for the Poles, but whatever.
So not Southern. So it's only
Southern.
one generation?
I only have one. My 4 grandparents, only one of them was a Southern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But were your parents thinkers? Readers?
Not really. I mean, they weren't dumb, but they didn't read they were very concerned with the practicalities of life. Mm-hmm. And, let's pay the bills, let's feed ourselves, let's do these things. And,
abstractions didn't take up a lot of their time. It wasn't an
interest. Yeah. I don't doubt that either one of them, if they suddenly got a wild hair up their ass and decided they were super interested in political philosophy, they could be very good at it.
Okay, so now the question is begged. Where did you get this from?
I think the Catholic Church.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no, this is interesting to me because keep going.
Okay.
Catholic Church, I believe you. That actually is plausible to me.
So
you need to explain this. A lot of people are going to assume, or maybe know in a sense from their own personal experience that the Catholic Church is anti-intellectual.
Oh, no.
I don't think so either. No.
So my father was not Catholic. My father's kind of not really religious, but my mother was Catholic. And she had me baptized and raised as Catholic. And the Catholic Church was the only place I ever went where a grown-up who was highly educated, Catholic priests are highly educated, talked to me about important things like I was an adult, like serious matters. He didn't dumb things down for me. He gave it to me at as high of a level as I could understand it. And
was he a Jesuit?
He was not. He was an ordinary parish priest, Monsignor Albert Bageron. I believe he's still alive, and God bless him if he's out there listening.
So he was the pastor of your local church.
St. Bridget Parish.
He was not a teacher. You didn't go to Catholic school.
I went to Catholic high school, but I didn't go to Catholic elementary school.
And when did you start talking to, what was his name?
Monsignor Bergeron?
Bergeron?
Bergeron. French Cajun.
Bergeron?
Yeah.
When did you start talking to him about these things?
Well, it was just in his homilies every week. He was kind of a little notorious in the parish for going long and talking in a lot of depth about things when people wanted to go home and watch the football game. But I just ate it up. You know, he would talk about the doctrine of the Trinity on Trinity Sunday, and I would just sit there and eat it up and be like, what, more. I look forward to the homilies every week. I wanted to go to church because I wanted to hear the homily. And I was just fortunate, I guess. You know, I mean, I've heard some pretty indifferent homilists over the years, but the one I grew up with was very good. From my weird perspective, from the perspective of a guy who wants to go and watch a football game, Monsignor Bergeron was a nightmare.
Well, they're speaking about abstractions.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Abstract ideas. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not training you how to fix your car.
Yeah.
Right?
And it was the only people who talked to me about that.
Yeah. And you were attracted to that kind of thinking, abstract thinking.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much the content, it wasn't so much the particular argument that was being made, right?
I did some of the arguments made sense to me, some of them didn't. I pushed back. I went through a period of like being an edgy teenage atheist. But it was
you were just interested in big ideas.
Yeah, and he was the only person in town talking about them. And so I was listening.
Not just the ideas that you need for survival, right?
Yeah.
Like how to do divisions so that you can figure out, you know, your budget for the month.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just a mystery to me. It's always like, why are certain people interested in those ideas and others not? Like, what is it?
I don't know.
You know, we haven't identified any lineage, any genealogical lineage there for you.
Well,
right?
my maternal grandfather was a university professor. But he was a university professor of...
So now we're getting into eugenics already.
Yeah, definitely. I've been denounced as a Nazi. Just so
we'll get to that too. Don't stop blowing the punchlines.
So yeah, he was a professor of metallurgical engineering, chemistry, physics, that kind of thing. Again, a uncommonly brilliant man, but not a person who had a lot of time for like airy theories about society.
So if you believe that IQ is passed down and whatever, so that's a possibility, right? Yeah. But again, that sounds like a very particular kind of intelligence, the kind that IQ measures.
Tracks.
Yeah. Okay. We don't know why you got that. Well, for whatever reason, you were attracted to the abstract thinking that you first heard from your parish priest.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. As a kid.
Very small. I started being an altar boy when I was 6. I begged and begged and begged.
And you hated school.
Did.
Because it was irrelevant to your life.
As hell.
Yeah. And you didn't do well?
No.
What were your grades?
I barely graduated high school.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It came down to one question on my trigonometry final. Yeah. And I think that Miss Dupre, I think was her name, might have cut me some slack.
Yeah. So we have that in common too. I hated it and did terrible. Very poorly.
I just wouldn't do anything that they told me.
I didn't understand it. I mean, I really didn't understand it. It was like, I always say it was like, you know, the Charlie Brown cartoons?
Yeah.
Whenever the adults were talking, it was like, that's what school was to me.
It was like just boring and tedious. Like I understood it when I cared to. And I had a handful of teachers who were fantastic. But most of my teachers, it was just like, I don't care what you say, and I'm going to throw spitballs or do dumb stuff and get in trouble. And you know, I got called into the guidance counselor's office like constantly because they would be like, look, we look at your aptitude test. You could be doing so well. Why aren't you? And it's like, because fuck you and fuck this is why.
Yeah.
And
So, you know, I've been wrestling with this question lately. Like, what do we do about that? I mean, you and I'm sure agree that the schools as they are no good. That they are basically containers for children. But should we just let the kids go? I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that most kids should not be in school. Does that make sense? Like, they shouldn't be inside 4 walls.
I think
they shouldn't be in a regimented environment. They shouldn't be made to line up. They shouldn't be shuffled from one subject to the next every 40 minutes. They shouldn't be treated, you know, they shouldn't be organized, forced to be organized in that particular way. That learning is not happening. What at best you get is, you get conformity, right? And that was, of course, the whole purpose of public education from the get-go. That was the stated express purpose of public education by the founders of our system, Horace Mann and his ilk in the 19th century. So, you and I and people we hang out with agree with that the current system sucks in all sorts of ways. But then it's sort of like, what do you replace it with? And then it's been, homeschooling has been the alternative. Fine, but then that means I've got to be a teacher.
It's also a very like class-based idea.
There's a lot of working class. No, it started out as a religious movement.
Well, yeah,
I know. It was Christians, my working class Christians.
After my parents divorced, my mother, she could not have homeschooled. Like we would not have eaten.
Right. That's what. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I don't know how these working class people do it, but they do. I guess the dad has the job that pays well enough so that they can survive, and then the mom stays at home and is a teacher.
Here's an idea. Okay. What if the way that we get rid of schools is we go back to prioritizing the family, assuming that marriage is for life, is for the creation of children, and the education and rearing of children, and that the proper calling of a married man and a married woman is the education and rearing of their children.
Wow.
And they do that, and their jobs or whatever are means to that end and not ends in themselves.
Straight up conservative moment right there, right? You just made a straight up conservative argument.
I don't think I made a claim. That's not.
I'm not saying it's bad.
It's a reactionary argument.
Okay.
The conservatives are
yes.
The conservatives are like, yeah, women should work too, and the conservatives in America are liberals from 1995, and to say like, no, I think that you should, because it's an anti-capitalist position, first of all, to say you should put your family first.
That's right.
And not your job.
Yep.
And it is not a position that the establishment, or whatever you want to call them, would be happy if lots of people started adopting, because things would stop working. People would stop making money to spend money, and society would become different, and they wouldn't like it.
So this is, I think, is this right? A paleo-conservative position?
Kind of. I don't know. I just think it's a
paleos are
sensible position.
So paleos are Burkean, Edmund Burkean conservatives, hostile to capitalism, hostile to imperialism, hostile to the application of universal abstract ideas to social relations and governance. Right.
Yeah.
So they want local and individual cultures to be allowed to develop organically. They don't want people coming in with their grand ideas and imposing uniformity and equality across cultures, social groups of all kinds, et cetera. They don't like capitalism because it changes the world radically and rapidly, and it also debases our interests because it appeals to our base instincts for bodily desires, drinking, sex, all that stuff.
It's the easiest way to sell somebody something is to appeal to their most primal instincts.
And it also wipes away old cultures instantly.
It turns us all into a human resources slurry that can then be managed and piped wherever they need it.
Yeah. So
I'm all about getting in the way of that and being difficult and impossible to manage, and a particular person from a particular place who lives a particular way and is not just an atomized nothing that you can do whatever with.
Right. You're a complicated dude, man.
I guess.
Well, because we met. Well, you used to be kind of a free market guy, right?
Yeah. So I was. And
let's just say that. Hold on. Let's just do that. Okay. Let's just put that on the table so people know what we're dealing with here.
I'm just an object of study.
No, you're way more complex than anyone I've ever talked to about this stuff, because you've changed positions, which I just love in people, because I've changed positions, and just anyone who's changed their fundamental ideas about big questions, I just adore and respect. No matter which direction you go in, that's a real thinker. That's a real intellectual.
I joined the Communist Party when I was 15.
Oh my gosh! So you've been everywhere.
Yeah.
One might say you're promiscuous.
I guess,
but there's nothing wrong with that, right? Well, maybe there is now, John. Maybe it wasn't. Anyway. Okay, so let the family do it.
Yeah, let the family do it, and get out of the family's way. Stop.
Does it need to be a nuclear family?
No. not at all.
Okay.
In fact,
now I'm warming up to
the
you.
nuclear family is the product of capitalism.
Oh, really?
Because you have to have a child rearing unit, and it has to be highly mobile so it can go where the work is. So it has to be a man, a woman, and their children, and they can just go wherever. If you are attached to your extended family, you're in a place. You're not going where the work is. You're there. That's your place. That's your home, and you're not going to leave it. One of the first things capitalism did, if you read about the early days of the Industrial Revolution in England, is it starts ripping people out of these villages. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you like about capitalism, is it makes them, free, brings them to these urban centers. But it had to do that. It had to atomize people, because if you won't leave your village because you're there with your mother and your grandmother and your grandfather and her parents and cousins and uncles and everybody else, and you're all a family, like a real family, not a little nuclear consumer unit, you're not mobile. You can't go with we need workers for this mine. Well, I don't know what to tell you, because I can't leave.
So I'm thinking of Engels, Marx's buddy, and his very famous essay on capitalism and the family. And this is not his argument, right? He makes a different argument about capitalism creating the nuclear family, but I think it's different than what you're. It's been a long time since I read it. It's not. He doesn't have an issue.
Well, capitalism was a necessary stage on the way to communism, right? Mm-hmm. So the Marxists and the left generally, they're against capitalism because they want to move past it to this new thing that's going to be better. So capitalism is a necessary step for them, but they want to go beyond it. Whereas what I'm talking about is like, no, this is not a good step. Let's go back.
No, I'm talking about your analysis of the nuclear family is that it was created by capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? It was necessary for capitalism. Necessary for it. And Engels, I'm trying to remember the argument. Engels argues that the nuclear family was created and the woman was placed in a subordinate position within the nuclear family, I think, so that there could be a wage earner.
Yeah, so the man could leave the house.
And have a stable environment to make him more productive, right, at the home. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day in the factory, he goes home and the wife keeps the home stable and feeds him and takes care of the children so that he can go back the next day to the factory. Yeah. I know that's the Marxist argument generally. I believe, I could be wrong, that's the origins of that argument are in Engels's essay, which I'll post on the show notes page. But your argument is different, I think, isn't it? In that it's about atomization.
Yeah.
That the Marxists, don't like the nuclear family because it replicates capitalism.
Well, they want to atomize further. They want to bust up the nuclear family and go to just dealing with individuals.
Well, and then collectivize everyone.
Turn them all into.
They're the opposite of atomizers. They want.
Well, no, they aren't, because you have to take an object and you want to homogenize it. The first thing you have to do is break it up into individual components, and then you can mix it together evenly, and you have your human resources slurry.
Right. So right. So the paleo, whatever you are,
evil. I'm bad.
Reactionary argument. Is of course different in that you don't like capitalism because it homogenizes people as workers and consumers. Yeah. Okay. But you also don't want to collectivize people. You just want to leave people alone.
Yeah, like just fuck off with all that.
But so then I love your analysis of the extended family versus the nuclear. I love that, because my thing is all about the extended family should be encouraged to raise our children, because it's exhausting.
It is.
For one thing, for a nuclear family for two people, or often it's one person, to raise children. I have one kid, and it's exhausting. It's backbreaking. You have two.
Oh, yeah.
I just can't even imagine it. And people who have 3, 4, 5, I just don't understand. Yeah. As a nuclear family, the good news is that for a lot of people, as you know, as a Catholic, who have the large families, tend to, I think this is safe to say, have aunts and uncles and grandma and grandpa and cousins and neighbors helping with the raising of the children.
They It's kind of interesting, the Catholic community in Tacoma. So Tacoma's not a Catholic city.
This is where you live.
Where I live now is Tacoma. And so just about all the Catholics there are from somewhere else. And they form their own little community, their own little world. And they have their own, social networks and their own, almost their own little village in Tacoma. I mean, it's not a physical village, but it's centered on the church, and everybody knows everybody, and they help each other and do things together. And it's it's kind of recreating, almost in a sense, the medieval village in the middle of an urban city in like a kind of a virtual sense, because we live all over. But.
So when people hear that you're interested in recreating the medieval village, they're not going to get turned on.
Okay, whatever.
So no, I'm just saying, so what does that mean for you? Does that mean that the woman is the eternal helpmeet was the word, right?
The idea that the medieval woman was like this subjugated like slave that just had no freedom and couldn't do anything is a ridiculous lie. There are, if you read about medieval history, it's full of women who were doing things, and not just upper class women. There are saints, female saints, who came from basically nowhere. Saint Catherine of Siena is like haranguing popes and emperors. And her standing is entirely the fact that she's seen as a holy woman, and so she can say whatever she wants to these people. And if you look at village life from inside, the women, maybe they aren't, I don't know, wearing hot pants and like acting all crazy and liberated, but they are very powerful figures in their communities. You don't piss off somebody's grandma where I'm from, because she'll bring the whole world down on your head.
Yeah. I think the argument's been made by a lot of historians and theorists of the left-wing feminist and postmodernist variety, actually, that the hard gender binary was really an invention of modernity.
Yeah.
That it was actually post-medieval.
I think that's
in
fair.
The medieval, if you read like Foucault, he references pre-modern times. And he calls it the regime of blood. And for him, this was where coercion was purely external.
Yeah.
That it was, the whip, the lash, the dungeon.
It was sincere.
The guillotine.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no, but it was external, right?
Yeah, I know.
So it was physical punishment.
But it was clear what was going on.
It was not shame.
Yeah.
It wasn't internalized.
Yeah.
And so what the modern people in Europe and America did was they understood that was largely ineffective in keeping people under control. This is why I'm sympathetic to Catholics, by the way, because I extended the Foucauldian argument to the religions and the Reformation, and for me, that was Luther and Calvin's whole argument. Really, at the bottom of it, if you really read their stuff, was that these Catholics are not keeping the people under control sufficiently. The way to keep them under control sufficiently is to have them read the Bible themselves, not have the priests interpret it for them, and more importantly, have them internalize the shame in the Bible, so that we don't need priests telling them what to do, how to behave. We don't need police. We don't need dungeons. We don't need the whip. They will whip themselves all day long, every day.
Yeah.
So, so the medieval world. And our resources are limited. The sources are limited, so we don't have nearly as clear a picture of it, whatever your position is on it, as we do, of course, as the modern world. Right, sure. So, and that's fine. I mean, we can make claims about stuff with limited sources as well. But, and I don't know medieval history.
I'm not an expert.
No. But I'm just saying, so I'm not making any definitive claims here, but I always thought, to me, that theory is really persuasive and interesting, that there was there's a good chance that things like that there was just simply more of what we would now call freedom, actually, in the Middle Ages than there is in the modern world, which is just completely counterintuitive to everyone who's taught in our public schools now, right? Who's our part of this culture now. And one of the ways in which, and I think actually this has been argued, there's a few historians I do know of who I think have made this argument about the medieval world, which is that, the gender binary was not nearly as hard, or didn't even really exist in many societies in many cases. So there was much more fluidity. Women were doing this, that, and the other thing. And I also know for a fact that in early America, because it's in my book, as you know, right? Early America, pre-revolution, women were owning saloons, owning stores, had quite a bit of social power and political power in the colonies here, which was not medieval, but you could certainly say it was pre-modern, or at least early modern. And right after the revolution is when they just imposed these binaries and said women are going to be in the home, and that's when they literally started arresting women who were promiscuous or who sold sex or who just weren't doing the right thing, and put them in reformatories to make them wives and mothers. So your medieval village that you want to see,
I mean,
or that you are.
And just to be clear, like obviously I understand we can't actually live in a medieval world.
No,
like,
but the one that you're saying, might be a model of sorts, right? Would actually have much more freedom for women.
I think so.
Than maybe now.
G.K. Chesterton once said that a woman in the modern world, she is oppressed when she's working for her family, and she's liberated when she's working for her boss. Mm-hmm. And obviously, his implication is that that's silly.
Yeah.
And I think it's silly for men too. It's silly to think, gosh, a man, he has so much freedom, and because he's out working for some asshole who has nothing to do with him and making that guy money. He's not oppressed. He's not here working for his kids. I work for my kids. Like I have a boss, but I work to take care of my children. Mm-hmm. And I think that the idea that liberation means like being an office drone or a factory drone or whatever is it's one of the biggest lies that people are sold. Particularly, I think women are sold in the modern world.
Wow. You know what you just did to me?
What's that?
You just made me rethink a whole thing.
Oh, dear.
You just made me feel the need to re-periodize, which we historians, that's a word we like to use, this whole thing. So, because what you were just saying just then immediately came into conflict with another historical claim made by several historians that I have a whole chapter on, 2 chapters in my book on, which is that women were liberated by capitalism.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And the argument is that they have, sort of as you were saying, they were locked in the home until the factories opened, and then they got to go work in the factories in Lowell, spinning yarn all day long at a mechanical loom.
Such freedom.
Now, we do know for a fact, though, that women were literally on the streets much more after that, that they were smoking and drinking and dancing and fornicating and being promiscuous much more than they were before capitalism. We also know this is true for gays and lesbians, that there was no such thing as a gay subculture at all. There's no such thing as a gay category or a culture. I mean, both as an idea about gay people and actual behavior. There's no evidence really of sort of, significant numbers of people sort of self-identifying as homosexual and then congregating together until capitalism. And John D'Amelio, who is sort of the founder of gay history, that's his amazing, brilliant argument, which is that homosexuality sort of as a category, both socially, physically, and ideationally, as an idea, was created by capitalism.
Yeah.
Or made possible, that there's no such thing as like eternal homosexuality, right?
Yeah.
So hold on.
Okay.
So man, Jesus Christ, Jonathan Carp.
Blasphemy.
You don't have a college degree.
No, I don't. I will in a couple of weeks.
Christ. And look what you did to me. So now I'm thinking, now I'm trying to like salvage.
Can I say something?
Hold no.
Oh, no.
No.
Okay.
You talk when I let you. No, now I'm like, you put me in this position where I feel like I have to salvage my ideas from the wrecking ball you just threw to them. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the move I'm going to make. See what you do with it. Okay, you ready?
All right, yeah.
All right. So now I think maybe there were 3 periods.
Okay.
So maybe there was the pre-modern period, which is a real long period. And it's kind of silly to group all that stuff together. But still, there's a pre-modern period, which we don't know exactly what was going on, but there's a good chance that it was, binary divisions were fluid.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. That the gender divisions were fluid, that there wasn't so much of a hard binary division. All right. Then there's the modern period when there's the crackdown. And, this is documented. It's in my book. It's in lots of people's books. This is there. We know this. I don't think you would challenge it. Women were literally physically punished, literally kept out of professions.
Yeah.
They're literally punished for not being wives and mothers, put in reformatories, shamed. They were, kept out of many, many professions. There was an absolute bar against women entering those professions, right? We agree on that.
Yep.
So that's when the hard binary comes into existence. So that's like the 19th century, basically, okay? And then capitalism comes along at the end of the 19th century, and then women are running out of the house. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how about that? All you historians listening, and everybody, and John Carp, what do you think? Can we divide world history in terms of gender in that way? Are there 3 major epochs for women?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really buy into this whole periodization thing, because I find it when you drill down into these transitional periods, you find more continuities than anything else. And I don't really see hard breaks in history. I mean, my household would horrify all of your good leftist listeners.
Why? What are you doing in there?
I work, and my wife is home raising the children, and we have a very sort of traditional home life, and we're happy, and it's great. But I mean, we're doing things that are just not done anymore.
So wait, it is the nuclear family.
It is, but the reason it's a nuclear family is because my family's been pulverized by capitalism for like 150 years. Like, there's nowhere I can go.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Right. The term is crowded out. Right.
Yeah.
The capitalism. Well, in this case, capitalism has monopolized social life in a sense. Right.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you can't create the alternative extended family.
Right. No. And
network
I think,
or model here.
I think like. The nuclear family, the only thing I will say for the nuclear family is that it's better than just the atomized mass of individuals. Mm-hmm. I would much rather to have my little world with my wife and my children than to just be like a bunch of separated consumers. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I would give anything to live in a world with, where my grandmother's down the street and my other grandmother's, in the next neighborhood. And
you sure about that?
Uncles. Yeah.
See, I don't know. Because
I knew people who had it, and I envy them so much.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Me too. And I rhapsodize, as I just did, about the extended family. And boy, that's probably a better way to raise children. And I certainly know as a parent, I would prefer it. But I'm only a parent for a few years, right?
Yeah.
So here's the question that comes to my mind when you talk about the medieval village and place, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
Which is, it requires that people be in the same place for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. The question that arises in my mind immediately is, what about mobility? What if I want to go to Tahiti for a few years and be a surf bum?
I don't know. Why do you want to be antisocial?
Why do I want to be antisocial?
Yeah.
Because I want to be?
I mean, why should you, why? Like,
well, I mean, so what are you going to do? How are you going to keep this community? So, okay, look.
Social pressure?
Look, you know what happened, John. You know what happened to your communities.
Yeah.
Capitalism came along, and were people forced out of their villages? Were they forced out of their families?
The enclosures happened. They deliberately made this way of life impossible because they found another way of life where they could make more money. They being the ruling class, the capitalist class. And so you read Graham Robb's The Discovery of France?
Mm-mm.
Fantastic book. It is all about how, with the advent of modern capitalism, the French government had to go around and actually make France French. Because before, it was just this crazy medieval patchwork of little places mm-hmm. that had their own little dialects and their own little languages and their own little traditions, and they couldn't do anything.
You're talking post-revolution?
Yeah. It
mm-hmm.
was like an ungovernable medieval mass mm-hmm. of chaos.
Yep.
And so what they did deliberately is they went in and they imposed French. Mm-hmm. Like one of the statistics in his book, I wish I'd looked it up, but a majority of Frenchmen didn't speak French as late as the late 19th century. Mm-hmm. They spoke their own weird little dialects. Mm-hmm. And they went in and they imposed French. They imposed the French hierarchy's brand of Catholicism. Took away all the local rites and all the little local rituals and the local saints and standardized everything and made everybody into good little Frenchmen so that they could do things with them. They did this on purpose. This was a plan. This whole like libertarian notion that, capitalism is just freedom. It's just the free market. It's a bunch of bullshit. Capitalism was an imposed choice. Because it makes the people who own things more money. They needed workers, so they made them.
I think you're brilliantly wrong.
Okay.
So you know where they got that idea from? Those French people the French officials who imposed Frenchness.
The English?
No, Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that's Rousseau's idea, right? Which is that, and this was Burke's opposition to him, mm-hmm. right? Which was Rousseau's idea in The Social Contract, one of the most important books in the history of Western civilization. Everyone should be familiar at least with the argument of it if you want to understand the world you're living in particular the world in Europe. The argument in it is that people are unequal because of private property and unnatural. He calls it unnatural imposition of rule by kings and slave owners, etc. So the world is unequal, people are unequal, and we need to make it equal. And the way to make it equal is to have a social contract that everyone enters into willingly, but that is eternal and unchanging. And then he doesn't really say this, but in that book, he never actually, I don't think there's never any reference to any specific country. So it's not actually applied. And he was Genevan, so he wasn't even French, but he wasn't talking about Geneva. He wasn't talking about France. He wasn't talking about England. He wasn't talking about any particular place. It sure looks to me when you read that text like it's a universal idea that one set of standards, norms, rules, laws, customs should be imposed, I suppose, but willingly imposed, right? Then what happens is the French Revolution comes along, the Jacobins, who are the Rousseauians, take over, and that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
So they have this, set of the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which is this list of so-called rights, but it's also duties inside of there, right?
Yeah.
That everyone should have, everyone should adhere to, everyone should agree with this. And if they don't, well, we know what happened, right?
Yeah.
Bad things to those people. Then, now for the time being, that was a French phenomenon largely, but many of the Jacobins, many of the leaders of the French Revolution were universalists. They believed that these ideas were not good and true just for French people, of course, because this is all morally right. It must apply to everyone. And so guess who comes along to take care of that? Mr. Napoleon, right?
Yeah.
So he's the culmination of the French Revolution, becomes the dictator, and what does he do? He marches across Europe, conquering and imposing the Napoleonic Code.
Yeah, Louisiana.
Yeah, which imposes, and that is the word to use here, imposes a uniform set of laws on all these places, not just countries, but localities, all these localities and countries and just all over Europe and North Africa and Louisiana, et cetera, ended up having basically the same governing structure.
Yeah.
Right? Man alive, that is the root of all of it. Well, so that's the root of progressivism. That's the root of socialism. That's the root of New Deal liberalism. And Edmund Burke was writing at the time at the time of the French Revolution, and saying what you're saying, I think, which is, no, that is violence. People talk about violence now, like violence in words. He said that is violence. It's both physical violence. It's also cultural violence. It's psychological violence. He didn't use that term, but I think that's what he meant, which is that it requires all of humanity, really, everyone, to do away with, kill their individual or local ideas, customs, norms, you name it. Now, John, I'm almost done.
Okay.
All of that was done, what I just described, all that attempt to codify, universalize, standardize the world, was done by the state, was done by the Jacobins who took control of the power of the state, and Napoleon who did the same, right? So that ain't capitalism.
Well, it's not capitalism in the sense that this project you're talking about is actually much older than the Jacobins or Rousseau. Rousseau put like ideological flesh on it, but Charlemagne did the same thing.
Sure.
Since the collapse of central authority at the end of the Roman Empire, the ongoing project in Europe was these centralizing authorities trying to establish their control.
Right. No, it just didn't stick the way that Rousseau's ideas stuck.
They weren't as good at it. They didn't develop the administrative technology.
Right.
The state is an administrative technology, and they invented it and they used it and they applied it to people. But I think that it also became a much more urgent project when people realized they could generate vast amounts of wealth if they could make peasants into workers and regiment their lives. Then the English could conquer the world, and the French could build their colonial empire, and their elites could do these things and compete with each other better if they made their peasants wake up to an alarm clock and go to the factory and give up their attachment to their village and be willing to move hither and thither. And you end up with people like me. I'm effectively from nowhere. I grew up in Louisiana.
Exactly.
I don't have any roots there. I have no relatives in my hometown. I have no reason to go back, which is weird.
But didn't you choose to be here. We're sitting right now in Washington State, and you're from a little town in Louisiana.
Yeah.
That's a long way away.
I did choose to be.
And you have no roots here, right?
No roots here. I have no roots there.
So did you choose to come here, or were you forced to?
The Army sent me here on orders.
Oh, so you really were forced here.
But I did like it.
But again, that's the state. That's the state.
Yeah.
Well, but when you were talking about the clock, you started to sound like Thad Russell. Yeah. So yeah, I am not just a cheerleader for capitalism, as anyone who's read my book knows. You're totally right that capitalism, when it comes along in the 19th century, the first thing it does is put a clock in front of people and say, this is how you're going to organize your life from now on, forever. And you're gonna abide by the clock. And oh, by the way, when it goes to that number, the number that says 7 or 8 or 6, that's when you come to our factory.
Yeah.
And if you don't come to our factory, when it hits that number, you will starve to death.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it hits another number, like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, that's when we let you leave.
Yeah.
Now, you can leave. We're not going to kill you, but you'll starve to death.
Yeah.
Because right now in Lowell, Massachusetts, and we're talking to you women in 1830, you women who have just left the home, who we were just talking about, and now for the first time you've left the home and you're liberated and you are working in this factory. We are the only factory in town. We're the only other job. We're the only way you will escape from your father or your husband or your little town. Now, you're going to have more money. You're going to have that kind of freedom, that kind of physical mobility. But there's a new kind of kingdom here that's going to be operating all day, every day, that you must abide by. You must be a subject of if you're going to escape your little town. Okay, so let's hold on here. Let's go back.
Okay.
Let's go back. Let's track back. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Army. You mentioned the Army. My God, we haven't even done this.
We haven't.
My God. We haven't even talked about the reason I brought you here.
Oh, dear.
And it's an hour in. That means this is going really well. Wow. It's amazing. When I talk to you, I rethink everything.
Well, thanks.
I rethink everything. I still think you're completely wrong.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, man, really. It's really, really something. It's just something talking to you because okay, you screwed up in high school, terrible grades, so you didn't go to college.
I went to college.
Oh, why not? Why?
Because
how?
My family was like, no, you're going to school. It was always expected that I would go to college. Louisiana had a program called TOPS, I think it was called. I don't know what TOPS stands for. But basically, if you graduated with above a certain ACT score and above a certain GPA, they'd give you a free ride to a public university. And I barely made the GPA cutoff. It was a 2.5. I graduated with a 2.500. So I had a free ride, went to university, did a lot of drugs, drank a lot, went to class.
Which university?
Pretty rarely. First, Nichols State University.
Louisiana?
Yeah, Louisiana. And then, family issues. I ended up moving to Pensacola where my dad lived. Went to what is now the Pensacola State College. It was Pensacola Junior College then, which was his alma mater. And studied classics when I felt like going, and sometimes I just didn't go. And eventually, I just stopped being in college and started working just odd jobs that I could get. And
oh, that's right. When I met you online, anyway, you were interested in you were going to go to graduate school in classics.
Yes, I was.
That's right.
I love classics.
Classics. What's classics? A lot of people don't even know what that means.
Classics is the study of essentially the ancient Mediterranean world, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and the civilizations around them, which were kind of the seedbed, I guess, for the world we live in today. We still live in the post-classical world. Our society in a lot of ways is still reacting to ideas and things that went on back then.
But where on earth, being in rural Louisiana, Catholic, dad's an engineer, Pensacola, Florida, he's an Army guy, or at least an Army family.
Yeah.
Where on earth do you get these ideas, these interests?
Well,
no, really.
I can pinpoint the classics thing.
Okay.
One of two teachers that I liked at my high school was a man named Brother Ray. I can't pronounce his last name. Kuhn, Kuhn, something like that.
Another priest?
He was not a priest. He was a brother. He took religious vows, but he wasn't ordained as a priest. He taught at my high school. He was a genius. He was a polymath. He taught physics, moral theology, Latin, and whatever else came down the pipe for him to teach. Had advanced degrees in all these subjects. And I liked him. He didn't treat me like a problem. Most of my teachers treated me like a problem. Brother Ray seemed to like me. And I mean, maybe he was just a good teacher. I don't know. I think he did. I think he was a genuine guy. And so one of the things, you know, when you're a young man and your parents are divorced, you don't have a father at home, you're kind of looking for a father figure. And he took an interest in me, and he cared about what I did and what I thought. That's something else. He took me seriously. He didn't see me as like this curiosity with a high IQ that had to be dealt with because it kept fucking up in class. Like, he wanted to know what I thought and what I felt. And the only class of his that I could take because of my schedule was Latin 1. So I took it. And I loved it. And I really kind of fell in love with classics, studying Latin with Brother Ray. And I don't know, it just became a lifelong interest.
Yeah, so we sort of skipped over this thing about your dad leaving. Or, well, I don't know if he left, but when you were 7, your parents broke up.
Yeah.
And you lived with your mom?
I did.
After that?
Yep. She was a shipyard electrician.
Oh, wow.
She's kind of a feminist pioneer. She was the first woman to do a whole bunch of things. And
Rosie the Riveter, sounds like.
Yeah. She loves Rosie the Riveter, yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And was your dad around, though?
He would come to visit. But he was working overseas a lot. I went to Singapore when I was 12 to see him for Christmas because he was working there, which was bizarre because I was living in this little working class town in Louisiana, and all of a sudden I'm flying to Singapore, and I was the only kid I know who'd been out of the country, you know.
Yeah. But then you went and lived with your dad in Pensacola later.
When I was 18.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think you're more like your dad than your mom?
I'm kind of like both. I mean, I could see elements of myself, you know, and even in physical appearance, some angles I look just like my dad, some I look just like my mom. And you have a family now. I do.
You're married, 2 kids.
2 kids, great boys.
And you've been married for how long?
10 years.
And you got married when you were pretty young.
25.
And did you always think you were going to get married and have kids?
Yeah.
Have a family?
Yeah.
A family. Do you think, here's just what's thrown at me, and it's what I've thrown at myself in a sense, so I'm going to throw it at you. Do you think that was a reaction to the fact that your parents were divorced and you were from a so-called broken family?
It is absolutely.
You're trying to compensate?
I will not put my children through a divorce. I won't. You know, I love my wife. We've had arguments, we've had issues, but it is not something that I'm willing to contemplate. I'm their father, and I'll be their father in their house, married to their mother until I'm dead and in the ground.
Well, sure, but you didn't have to have the kids. In other words, so the argument that is made, and I believe this was true for me, is that I had an intense desire to have children beginning when I was like 14 years old. What 14-year-old guy thinks about having kids, right?
I didn't, not at 14.
Yeah, I did. I dreamed about it. I knew I was going to have 3 kids and a wife and a nice little house. I didn't need to be rich, but I needed that. I needed that family. And I had literally dreams about either being adopted by a nice family or having my own, mostly being adopted. But I literally dreamt about being part of a family because I came from this completely broken, messed up family, raised by my father, single father for most of my childhood. And it was just intense. And every girlfriend I had, you know, when I was like 18, 19, 20, you name it, I was like, okay, you know, I want to have kids, and we're going to, you know, so if we're going to be together for a long time, that's kind of the deal here. Yeah. So I lost some girlfriends, but finally one agreed to it. And then I had a kid, and pretty much immediately I thought, oh, no, this is really too much for me. I'm not so sure I'm going to have another one. And then that's exactly when I started to rethink the family, and I started to rethink my own intense desire for it. It was pretty clearly, I think, an attempt to correct my own childhood, right? To sort of remake my childhood according to my fantasies of what childhood should be. Yeah. So it was also cultural, right? There was a cultural thing going on in me. Do you think that is fair in terms of yourself? I don't know. I mean, when I met Mandy, she had a child already, and so I knew children were part of the deal with this woman that I loved, and I wanted a child, a biological child. Not, I've raised Trent since he was 6, and I love him like he's my own son. But I wanted a child, another one, and honestly, kind of what happened is I was getting ready to deploy, and I was like 90% sure I was going to die. So we conceived Max, and then I went to Iraq. Kind of the worst imaginable time to have the baby, but we did. So you're 18 years old? 19? Well, sorry, okay, so you're 18, you're in Pensacola.
Yep.
You're at an Army base?
No, I'm actually at my grandmother's house.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Yeah, and I'm kind of just a delinquent.
And this is when?
Let's see, I moved there in 2000. So I was there 2000 to 2003.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So guess what happens between 2000 and 2003?
9/11.
And so that affected you, right?
Yeah, I actually ran out and tried to join the Navy.
Immediately.
Yeah, and it didn't work because
to fight the bad guys.
Yeah, but I was really high a lot of the time, and the Navy was kind of like, come back when you're sober.
So your politics were what? Were they non-existent? Were they formative? Were they changing? What happened?
All right, so here's politics. When I was a kid, the only ideas I was really exposed to were like kind of normal, like traditional conservative Republican ideas. So when I was very small, I just went with that. When I was 12, I went to this private high school, right? And my dad helped pay for it. He was doing very well. Plus, the parish that I attended helped pay for it, and my mother worked extra hours to pay her part of it. So a lot of adults came together to put me in this high school, and I completely blew it there. But I was around all these rich kids, right? And I noticed things really quickly. Like their parents had free time and energy. And everybody had always told me all my life, if you work hard, you'll get ahead. You work hard, you'll make money. You'll have a future, right? Well, my mother worked harder than anyone I knew. She worked 16-hour days in the belly of a steel ship without air conditioning because she was installing the wiring, and came home all cut and bloody and burned and we weren't destitute, but we were not wealthy. Mm-hmm. And I looked at all these other people and I was like, well, why the hell? Like they don't work hard. They take off work to go to their kids' stuff. My mom can't. My mom works too hard. So what's the deal here, basically? And I went looking for answers, and I found Marxism. And I was just, it was like, the
on your own,
on my own.
This was without a college professor leading you there,
without anybody even like telling me not to. In the library of my Catholic high school, I found the Communist Manifesto, and then like an anthology of Marx, and I read it. And I was like, this is it. This is why. Because these rich parents, they're the exploiters. And my people, we're the exploited. And we need to like kill them and take their stuff. So I joined the Communist Party, like you do. And
you were an actual member?
I was a card
You talking
carrying.
about the CPUSA?
Because
there are a lot of communist parties.
We had just gotten the internet, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I like Marx. Where's the Communist Party? And I typed Communist Party into like web crawler or whatever the hell, and found their website, and was like, all right, that's the one for me. If I'd grown up in New York City, I would have been like, do I want to be a Trotskyite or a this or that or the other thing? But I was just like, Marx is a communist. These are the communists. I'll be them.
It was like. Right. You took like the Walmart version of left-wing politics.
Yeah. Well, that's what was available to me.
I love it. Okay. So you joined the Communist Party USA. You're like 18, 19, 20?
I was 15.
15?
Yeah. And all the adults in my life flipped out. They all went crazy. They were like, what are you doing?
Oh, back in Homa, you were in the Communist Party.
I was in Homa. Yeah. I was a card-carrying communist at Vanderbilt Catholic High School.
Carp.
But all the adults in my life freaked out and were like, what are you doing? Oh my God, communism's bad. And they were just kind of like, it was kind of very vague. Like, communism is just bad. Don't be a communist. And nobody could really give me like an explanation. But then I came across in a used bookstore, in little twists of chance, the first volume of the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I was about 16, 17 maybe. And I read that and I was like, well, fuck this. Like, communism's terrible. And so I was just kind of a vaguely sort of lefty-ish Democrat type. And then I got on the internet. When I moved to Pensacola, of course, I moved away from all my friends and all my everything. So I spent a lot more time on the internet, and I came across libertarians. And at first I was like, so libertarianism, it's interesting because they make the claims that like American history class tries to knock down. Like, capitalism can just be unrestrained and crazy. Like it's like an answer on a test in 11th grade American history that you have to restrain capitalism.
Right.
And
it's the correct answer, you mean?
Yeah, it's the correct answer. So I was drawn to them.
Not overthrow it, but restrain it.
Yeah.
Control it, regulate it, manage it. Yeah.
So I was drawn to them because I've always had an interest in people who think crazy things or think things that seem like you
Really?
shouldn't think.
So you've just
Yeah.
so maybe okay. So you've just been attracted to the outliers.
The outliers, yeah. It's interesting to me because it's very easy to be a liberal in America.
I've noticed.
It's like and they think they're so brave. It's so funny to me. Like they'll be like, I stood up to Trump today, like you and 300 million other people, lady. Like who cares? But anyway,
It's the resistance, John.
yeah.
They're brave.
I
Staying
wish-
out there with 10 million other people in the streets.
Yeah. If NBC praises something you did, it wasn't brave.
Yeah.
Like unless you were like somebody was shooting at you at the time.
It is remarkable. Anyway, okay. So you found libertarians because they're weird.
Yeah, I found them because they're weird, and I argued with them, and I kept losing arguments because I kept making like just shitty like normal Democrat arguments with them, and they kept knocking them down. And finally, one of them threw a guy named Michael Barnett threw Human Action basically at my head, kind of as like a projectile.
Written by
Ludwig von Mises.
So I've never read it. By the way,
I have.
Here's yet another reason why I'm not a libertarian. Everyone listening, it's kind of it's a canonical text for libertarians, right?
So I don't think that he thought I was going to read it because it's 800 pages of like this turgid Germanic prose about economics. It's a horror. I mean, in terms of its ideas, it's a very interesting book, but in terms of like its quality as a literary document, it is a horrible, horrible book. But I read it. I read the whole thing, and I was like, all right, I'm convinced. I'm sold. Let's do this. And so the next thing that happened politically, the next two things that happened after that were the lead up to the Iraq War and the longshore workers strike. And I kind of went to my libertarian buddies when the government broke this longshore workers strike and was like, hey, this is bad, right? We oppose this. And they're like, no, unions. Oh, fuck unions. And I was, well, so you guys suck at your own ideology.
Wait, which Iraq war? What year are we in?
We're in 2002-ish.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought you enlisted like immediately after 9/11.
No. I was dumb. I enlisted in 2005.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, but 9/11 did have an effect on you.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And in a not so liberal. Well, actually, I take it back. Liberals were, right on the war horse themselves.
Yeah. So I was pro Afghanistan, but I was anti Iraq.
Right.
Because as a 19-year-old stoner in a junior college, I could see that this was going to be a disaster. But the people who have like advanced degrees and work in government did not.
So hold on though.
Okay.
You go commie. You're a commie, and then you're a libertarian.
Yeah.
And then you join the army.
And I joined the army.
How's that happen?
Well, I wasn't. Oh God! So
quickly,
yeah.
For the folks at home.
All right. So I wasn't a full bore anarchist, right? I was a libertarian, sort of a libertarian light-ish kind of thing. I believe like what they call a minarchist, right? And I also I strongly oppose the intervention in Iraq, but I felt that because I was naive, if we started it, we had to finish it because I thought we could. Right, I just thought it was good, and the other naivete is that I thought they actually would. They would spend the money that would be required to win this counterinsurgency. They didn't. They didn't want to. But I enlisted.
How old were you?
24, 23.
Okay,
something like that. Yeah.
In 2005.
Yeah,
in the army.
2005 in the army.
Okay,
in like the worst part of the war.
But hold on. So because you thought it was a just cause, because you thought they could actually. It was a bad idea, but now it was a bad
idea. But it was. You remember Colin Powell? You break it, you bought it,
yeah.
sort of thing. I believed that.
Oh, so and you felt an obligation.
Yeah, and I wanted to get married, and Mandy wasn't going to marry the night.
You felt an obligation to pay for the broken vase.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. So it wasn't so much about killing the bad guys. It wasn't so much about killing Al Qaeda.
No, I was going to go over there and do humanitarian things.
Oh, you were gonna fix what the neocons had destroyed.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's really crazy.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
My God, I wish I had known you then.
And there was a personal motivation too. Mandy, she had a kid. She wasn't going to marry the night shift clerk at the gas station.
Were you married then?
I was not.
To Mandy? Okay,
I was dating her, and she had basically made it clear like we're not going to get married.
Yeah, that was just a completely crazy decision. You had this woman who. You're now married to, so clearly that was a good relationship. You were a libertarian. You believed that the Iraq War was a terrible thing, and yet you joined the army to go fight in the Iraq War.
I thought starting the Iraq War was a terrible thing.
Makes perfect sense to me.
I thought starting it was a terrible thing.
Okay.
I thought that since we had started it, we had an obligation.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, it's still pretty wild.
Yeah, that. Not everything makes sense when you're 25 and in love.
No, I know. Hey, believe me, if you held against me what I did when I was 25, I'm done. You had some medical expertise at that point too?
No.
Oh.
I was a nothing.
Okay.
I was literally a gas station clerk.
So tell us about basic training. You were in really good shape when you...
No, I was...
I love these stories.
So I was, a gangly nerd in high school. They tried to recruit me for the basketball team until they saw me in gym class, and then they dropped that idea. I'm very tall, but I'm not coordinated, and I was really out of shape, and I didn't know what I was getting into. And basic training I wasn't good at anything.
Where was it?
Fort Benning, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's it like there?
It is hot as hell.
Yeah. What is it like? Describe it. What
basic
does it
training?
look like? No.
Oh.
Like Fort Benning. What does it look
All right,
like? What does it feel like? I've never been on an army base.
It's Fort Benning. Every army base looks a little different, but Fort Benning is Vietnam era mass-produced concrete buildings.
Mm-hmm.
They all look the same. They don't look like
these buildings were actually built during Vietnam.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
I believe you. It makes sense, but yeah.
But
That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay.
And they don't look like any other building. Like there's not an analog. They're up on pillars, and you sleep on the second floor, and there's like a concrete pad underneath the pillars that you can do things on, and it's a weird place. They call it Sand Hill because of the sand that's everywhere, and it's miserable.
Huh.
I know guys who had a great time in basic training. I was not one of them.
But I would imagine for me immediately it would just be disorienting.
Oh yeah.
Above all else.
Oh yeah, it was
just
very disorienting.
So different.
Yeah, and I shipped to basic training the day Katrina formed in the Gulf.
That of course is deliberate.
Yeah.
Well, no, they want to disorient you, right?
Well, yeah, the disorientation is it's deliberate.
That's
they
crucial.
take you away. They take you away from everything. They move you around at night, so you don't know where you are.
Yeah. You must be taken out of your environment.
Yeah.
You must be remade into this thing.
Yeah.
This unit.
Yeah, the Army's not as aggressive about it as the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps' whole thing is we're just going to pulverize your personality and make a new one.
Right.
The Army just kind of wants to rearrange you a little
Right,
bit.
because you're kind of the industrial workers of the military,
Yeah.
whereas the Marines are the foremen in a sense, I suppose.
The Marines are the shock troops. They're the elite.
The sharp edge of the knife or whatever. Yeah,
and we were just the ordinary guys.
You're the proletariat in the military. Yeah. Once the Marines kill the bad guys, you're the ones who just go in and occupy.
Yeah, and we go in and continue to get killed by the bad guys. The Marines.
Yeah, you just occupy the place that was conquered.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we go in first. D-Day was the Army.
Right.
But it was a little credit.
Right, but it's less and less. But that's generally how it works.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, those are divided. Okay, so you're in this absolutely bizarre place. You're out of shape. You're uncoordinated. You're nerdy. You're an intellectual. You're a former communist and libertarian.
You make it sound so
you have
strange.
this beautiful girlfriend who's like wondering what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, she didn't know.
And so you had to hold that rifle over your head, right? While you're, what was it? What did it make you do?
It was a laundry
jump squats
bag.
Or something?
It was a laundry bag. So they had us pack all of our stuff in this like burlap sack laundry bag thing, and they're like, we get so you first go to basic training. You go to what's called I forget, 30th AG. It's basically like you get your haircut, you get your boots, you get your uniforms, and
That's when they strip you of your identity.
Yeah, it's not as bad there because the soldiers there, they aren't like drill. There are drill sergeants there, but they aren't there to like fuck you up the way the drill sergeants at actual basic training.
But I mean, I don't want to overstate this. I don't think I am overstating this because I do think the military on a certain level would agree with me. They are stripping you of your identity. I mean, that's the whole point of the haircut, right?
Yeah.
Is to make you look like everyone else.
Everybody else.
That's the point of the uniform, is to make you look like everyone else. And it's not that they're doing it because they're evil and sadistic, although some of them are.
You sign up for it.
It's because a military cannot function, right, without that.
Yeah.
So you can't have individuals in the military. You will lose every battle if you do.
can't be a special guy.
So it's the logic of the military. It's amazing. It's so interesting how like American culture has been so its connection to military culture, right? That those seem opposites, antagonistic in some ways, but it's something I haven't fully figured out yet, right? Because there is this atomization that's been going on for more than 100 years in this society. But simultaneously, I mean, there's never been a moment really when we've been anti-military, broadly speaking, as a culture. I mean, even during Vietnam, I'd say most people were still essentially pro-military, right? And always admired people who were in the military, right? Gave them a special respect, deferential to them. It's a funny thing. And maybe it's out of guilt because we are these crass consumers most of the time. We are so engrossed in our own individual interests and desires most of the time. And so we see the selfless guy who sacrifices himself and maybe we think, gosh, I'm bad. I should be more like him. I don't know. Okay, So they strip you of your identity. They give you the haircut.
Yeah.
Now you got to get in shape.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
I am going to.
Or what do you do?
I was basically made to run everywhere that I went, and all I ate every day was
Were they yelling at you because you were out of shape?
Constantly.
Okay, so you were less in shape than most others?
Much less in shape. Than
you were like,
I was.
So this was, what's the movie?
Full Metal Jacket.
It is Full Metal Jacket.
You're
that guy.
They nicknamed me Gomer Pyle. Mm-hmm. Like the guy in Full Metal Jacket got nicknamed Gomer Pyle.
Damn,
yeah.
what a movie. So that really is what's going on.
Well, the thing about Full Metal Jacket exaggerates it because they're trying to get at what's really going on in basic training. Like they exaggerate the physical aspects of it because what's really gets in your head at basic training is that you are now completely owned. Like there is no escape. If you run away, they'll come and find you. There was just a guy now who just a couple days ago who got busted for deserting 30 years ago. They finally found him.
Oh my God.
Like if you sign that line, they own you completely. And that's really what gets in your head, at least got in my head. Like the fact that they were screaming at me and calling me names and insulting me and my mother and my father and everyone I'd ever met, like eventually it just became like passe because I got picked on in school too. It was just like whatever. But like I can't leave. Like there's no way out. That was what really like gets inside your head and makes people crazy. We had people try to kill themselves and that kind of stuff. You know, that's really what it is.
You saw people or knew of people who tried to kill themselves?
We had a guy in our platoon who tried to kill himself. Yeah.
How did he do it?
He went to sick call, which is like going to the doctor basically. Complained of some ailment, and they gave him a bunch of ibuprofen, and he took them all at once. And it didn't do anything. And then at Fort Benning, their approach to suicide watch is to make you wish you had succeeded. So they put him in a pink vest, and like he slept in a cot, and that was right by where the drill sergeant's office was, and there was always a light on him, and he was never alone. So it was like, God, I bet you wish you pulled it off, don't you? Like,
man, oh man. Okay, yeah. So not only are you the most out of shape, you're also this brainiac intellectual. I would imagine you were probably the smartest guy, and certainly the most interested in ideas among.
Yeah.
Was it a platoon? What were you organized into? Okay, and how many people is that? How many soldiers is that?
Maybe 40 in a platoon. Okay. 120 in the company.
So that was your core unit that you were living with, operating with. Okay.
Yeah, I lived with my platoon.
And who were they? Who were these guys? The other guys?
All kinds of guys. They're all kinds of folks. There were guys who were running away from bad situations. There was a guy, I can't remember his name, black guy from the south side of Chicago who said he joined the Army because he didn't want to get shot. And then there were also like all American, Captain America types, like my friend Nick Crombie, who was killed in Iraq. He loved the Army. He loved his country.
Talk about Nick Crombie.
All right, so Nick Crombie. Nick was born in Winnemucca. I don't know if he was born there, but he's from Winnemucca, Nevada, and he joined the Army. And he wanted to be a combat medic. He didn't want a career. I think he wanted to be a band director when he grew up, but he joined to be a combat medic because it's something he wanted to do. And he was just a great guy. Like you referenced, holding the laundry bag over my head. So I'm holding it over my head, and then I'm freaking out because I can't hold it up anymore. Like my arms are burning, and we've really kind of just started. Like the guys who were like in shape, the jocks, like they're like grinning at each other. Like it's not even hard for them yet. And so I'm holding it up, and they're yelling. They're not going to stop till somebody quits. And Nick's right next to me, and I don't know him at this point. And he's like, "Don't quit, don't quit, don't quit." And he didn't know who I was. Like he didn't know anything about me, but he saw somebody like struggling, and he wanted to help them. And that was just kind of the guy he was. And we became friends. I did end up throwing down the bag and walking out of formation and quitting, which just tarnished my whole basic training career. I was this just faggot pussy. You quit, you fucking worthless piece of blah 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 blah. Nick, there were other guys I later made friends with as we got to know each other who like saw past that, but Nick was the only person who never like held it against me at all. I was a guy, I was in the condition I was in, he accepted me where I was at, and he worked with me. I got in shape working out with Nick Crombie mostly. We did PT all the time in the Army, but when towards the end of basic training and then in medic school when we would have downtime, Nick would take me running. He'd go to the gym with me. He'd do things with me because he wanted me to succeed. And he was just this great guy. Like, he was really nice, really funny, really, like, almost kind of like a big puppy, but not in like a dumb, naive way. Like, he loved the world. And we were pretty good friends. And he was 19. I was 25, something like that. So I was older than him, a little more like worldly, I guess. A 24-year-old is an old man in basic training. And we went to medic school together. We were bunkmates in medic school. We hung out, all the time, spent our weekends together. He met Mandy. He was my best friend, really. And we graduated medic school and went our separate ways. I went to the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Hood, and he went to the 1st Armored Division, which at the time was in, I think, Germany. And then they were deployed from Germany to Iraq. So he went to Iraq almost immediately after we graduated, and he was killed in Iraq almost immediately after he got there.
How was he killed?
An IED. He was on a patrol in outside Ar-Ramadi in Anbar province. And an IED exploded, killed him, and First Lieutenant Scott Love, who was his platoon commander. He was 19. He was 19.
Yeah.
And it just, when I found out about it, I was at training to deploy myself, and it kind of just made everything more intense and harder, and made me angry, and it made me upset, and it turned what had been like a sort of political project that had like life improvement aspects into like a very personal thing. Like, this is like, I'm going to go to this country, and like the people who killed Nick are there, and they're going to try to kill me, and I have a wife, and I have a son, and I have another one on the way, and I've got to get through this. And it really, when I got the text message that Nick Crombie was killed was really when like my adult life began, in a lot of ways. And I think about him all the time. I've got a book of his letters home from basic training that his family put together. And
yeah, I just want to say, so John has written stories, essays, memoirs about this. And that's how good they are. So he wrote them for me. I asked him to write down his memories about Iraq and the people he knew. And this was about 5 years ago, and yeah, I'm still crying about that. But I did at the time.
I still want.
So wait, hold on. I just want to say, so yeah, and I want you to tell the other stories too.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to put those essays up on my website, and I hope people read them. But they're about Nick, they're about other people, and they're really remarkable, and it's just so affecting to me. So obviously, but so you weren't. So Nick was dead before you were deployed, right?
Yeah.
And you stayed in, even though you were failing basic training, right?
I graduated to the standards. I don't know whatever pride there is in that. I went from where I was to meeting the Army's physical fitness standards in 9 weeks and graduated.
You barely made it.
But I did.
And you still wanted to be in it? Barely.
I would say I pretty much gave up on the Army like maybe 6 weeks into my deployment. I was like, well, this is obviously like a total shit show, and I don't want anything to do with it. I ended up re-enlisting after that because I didn't have any useful job skills, and I wanted to get one, and I wanted to get off the deployment train, but I knew I wasn't going to have a career in the military. I kind of knew that going in, and then briefly I convinced myself that I might, and then it didn't work out.
So when did you get deployed to Iraq?
October 2006. We were the last cycle before the surge. Some of your listeners might remember the big push. We were right before them.
And you're a medic.
I'm a combat
medic.
Yep.
So you're on the ground with the guns.
Yep.
Well, tell us. I mean, what was that? What did you actually do? What was a day like?
Well, it all depended on what mission I had. I was with an artillery battalion, so there wasn't a big artillery mission in Iraq. We weren't, contrary to what some more overheated anti-war activists will say, we weren't actually indiscriminately raining artillery down on Baghdad. So they divided us up and gave us a bunch of different missions. My initial mission, we did what was called Tier 1 VIP escort, which meant if there was a very important person who had to go through a very dangerous place, we escorted them there. And it was basically sitting in the back of a truck and waiting to get blown up. And they tried repeatedly. I don't even know how many IEDs like went off like in my direction. I fortunately was never injured. My vehicle was never disabled. You know, we got through. We had, at this point in the war, we had armored vehicles. Like, we weren't like some of my buddies who went in with the initial push, they didn't have like doors on their Humvees and shit. But we had armored vehicles. But yeah, so I'd sit in the back of the truck and I had my aid bag and I would just kind of look at the side of the road and wait for it to blow up. And sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. And later on, we started escorting the EOD teams around. EOD's the bomb technicians. And that I got to see a little more of the war. I wasn't, just trying to get some State Department flunky from point A to point B. We were getting called out, a platoon would find a bomb and our guys would go out and we'd destroy it. And that was, I don't know, it sucked. A lot of what they did was post-blast analysis. So you would hear these reports in the news where they're like, a car bomb hit a market in Baghdad today and killed some like unreasonable number of people. And then we would show up immediately after it happened to like look at what it did. And I don't know what the point of it was. Like, I don't know what useful information they got from doing that, but I don't know, we did it. So I did that for a while. And we were the quick reaction force for the international zone. So like if some guy got scared or saw something he didn't like, and they did the Baghdad equivalent of calling the cops, that was us. And we like would go and check it out, whatever it was.
But you're the medic too, so
I'm the medic.
You're putting people back together, right, after they get blown up?
Yeah, so I treated the injured. We were fortunate in my battalion that we didn't have a particularly high casualty rate. Because of the nature of our mission and because of really, how do I describe Iraq? It wasn't Vietnam. Our enemy wasn't that as numerous. It wasn't like the Viet Cong are everywhere. It wasn't a jungle. So, and they would just hit and run. And so I treated stuff like, the worst thing I treated was a base accident where a young woman caught fire. And I did a little bit of time in the ER, the combat hospital. If you've ever seen the HBO special Baghdad ER, I was in there for a little bit as like a training rotation.
And what was that like? I mean,
it was medicine, is what it was like. I mean, it was gruesome.
But the bodies coming in,
the bodies
were torn.
They were torn and shattered and
terribly,
yeah, messed up. I remember a kid, he got shot through the shin. And like his foot moved separately from his knee, which was gross. And he was a local. He'd taken a shot at an American convoy, and they'd shot him back. And that's what war is like,
It's also, I think it's true. I think this is right, that a very large percentage of the combat deaths for U.S. troops was from accidents.
Yeah.
So
there
actually wasn't
number of accidents.
Not friendly fire and not taking fire from the enemy, but actually just accidents, right? A large number. So that was, and you referred to that.
Yeah.
One of those cases with the
Marisol
woman.
Heredia.
Yeah.
She was also 19. So she was a 19-year-old girl. I didn't really know her that well. She was in like a support unit attached to my unit, and it's shitty and petty now, but at the time,
where was she from?
California, I think, somewhere in California.
I think she's from Covina.
Yeah,
which is a place I know. Yeah.
Yeah. But she, so she was water purification technician or something. But they had her filling generators. And she was fueling a generator one day while it was running, and which was normal. Like that was how they fueled them, so it wasn't like she was doing something wrong. But something went wrong with the generator, and it gushed diesel fuel all over her. And the diesel fuel then ignited somehow. And me and several other medics were nearby when that happened, just kind of hanging out, killing time because we had nothing to do that day. I think I was the duty medic in the aid station that day, but I don't know. I'm not sure what I was doing. I was just there. And so we ran over and we saw her like rolling on the ground, kind of rocking back and forth, and somebody's leaning over her trying to put it out. And the senior medic who was there, he was a Staff Sergeant Takel was his name. He ran over to her to put the fire out and told us to go get the aid station ready. And so I ran into the aid station. I got tried to get these fire blankets that were locked up, and there was like a big like, get the key, don't get the key, or we're going to kick in the door. And then they finally brought her in, and she's burned all over. Her uniform is mostly gone. Her hair is all singed, but she's walking, and they bring her back to the aid station bed, the cot, and I'm there with a physician. And they put her up on the cot, and she's swelling, and her skin's like coming off in sheets, and her teeth are all black, and her lips are all black, and I don't tell this story very often. And she's asking me to kill her. She keeps saying, let me die, please kill me, let me die. She's 19, and she's just burned all over, and I'm putting these burn dressings on her. And I don't know. I felt like an idiot. I still, when I tell the story, I feel like just like a useless moron. Like there's somebody out there listening who's like, no, you should have done this. But I put the burn dressings on her, and she kept taking them off, yelling that she wanted to die. And they came and they transported her to the combat hospital, and she went home, and she died a couple weeks later of an infection. And it was just a stupid like accident. Like it's one of the things that I learned about in Iraq. Like you think when you're a kid, or at least I thought, like death was this huge event. Like the only death that I contemplated regularly growing up was the crucifixion of Christ. You know, every Good Friday we would read the Passion and we would think about it and dwell on. And it was the only death that I had really dug into. And of course it's this monumental event in Catholic teaching. It's like the center of history is the crucifixion. And so when I started seeing people die and just like nothing happened, like the world just like, it just doesn't give a shit. Like I saw a woman ripped in half by an IED, and it was just like, she was there like all the other garbage on the side of the road, which is a horrible thing to say, but it kind of destroys a lot of your images and conceptions of what being a person is. We think of ourselves as, you know, these kind of we're spiritual and we're intellectual, and we're very important, and we exist in this higher realm. But I mean, we're bags of meat with tubes in them, and these bags can be destroyed pretty trivially, without a whole lot of effort and without a whole lot of consequence, is what it looked like.
And you know what? Gosh, I wish I didn't care sometimes. Yeah. Like now, right? Yeah. I wouldn't have the reaction I just had. Life would be a whole lot easier.
It would. So
I'm now thinking about, what would like John McCain be thinking if he were listening to this? What would Hillary Clinton be thinking? What would Jim Mattis be thinking? Or what would their response be? Well, I think it would be, yes, that is terrible what happened to your friends. But that's what happens in the world, right? And they're right.
It is.
People do get killed in all sorts of ways for all sorts of reasons.
But we can't lose sight of it. It's just a terrible tragedy.
So I'm just I don't want this to be, anti-war porn.
No, I don't either. No.
And that's what I'm trying to think. It's always about numbers, though. When I teach the histories of wars, mm-hmm. I immediately notice that it's just numbers. So the casualties, this is almost a cliche, but it's true. They just are numbers. So you get X number of combat deaths in World War I, Y number in World War II, et cetera. And, the number of people who died in World War II we're now still estimating, but right now the common estimate is 65 million people. Yeah. And I tell my students, I don't know about you guys, but my mind can't do anything with that number. That is too big a number to make any sense to me. I can't see it, feel it, smell it. And it becomes a total abstraction. It becomes math, John.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe this is a reason that I'm have an allergy to that kind of, not science, of course, that makes nice things for me, but just scientistic thinking, which the military has always relied upon.
Yeah.
Making people into numbers, taking your identity away and making you into a unit, a number, and then you just become a statistic. So then when you die, it becomes way easier to take.
But they also...
As a society.
Yeah, as a society.
But when you talk about individual stories like this, it's a different story entirely, right? And now, I want anyone who's listening I don't want people to think, because Nick Crombie died horribly and Marcel Heredia died horribly, therefore the Iraq War was bad.
No.
That's not an argument.
No,
it's not. We are not making an argument, okay? But I do want to be clear about what's at stake.
Yeah.
So I'm not a pacifist. I do believe there's a possibility for a justified war, I suppose. If it's truly self-defense, give me a gun, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But what I think is the problem at the root of it is that we aren't really clear about what's at stake.
Yeah. People don't know about war anymore in a way that I think people used to. If you read, to kind of step back and make this highly abstract and fancy sounding again, if you read the old Norse sagas or the Iliad, these are written by men who had seen combat, for men who had seen combat, and they are explorations of what that experience means and what it's like. And they're not all anti-war porn. The Iliad is not an anti-war document, and it is a viciously violent poem. It is unsettlingly violent, way beyond anything Quentin Tarantino ever contemplated. But the experience of war, the experience of combat, is a part of the human experience. It's a part of what people do historically.
It certainly has been.
It has been, yeah.
No doubt about that, yeah.
And I think that as we've moved away from this being a part of a lot of people's experience, I'm the only combat veteran a lot of people know,
You're the only one I know.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I think.
And that's different. That's another thing that's weird. For a long time, the men would do the fighting if there was fighting to be done. And two men our age, we would both have war stories to tell.
Right.
And, we went off with the Lord's army and did whatever.
Right.
But now we don't. And I think it makes it easier for people to just be well, let's I don't know, go bomb them, whatever. Because you never see what a bomb does. You don't know what really is at stake here when you do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, boy. So you have challenged me today in every way possible. Intellectually, emotionally. Wow.
Well, I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, it's just amazing, man. Thank you.
We didn't even get to half the stuff.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks. This was the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. Our theme music was composed by Clint Partee, and our sound engineer is Gabriel Montgomery. If you have any questions you'd like me to answer on the podcast, post them to me at my Twitter handle, @ThaddeusRussell. Also, be sure to check out notes and links for each episode at thaddeusrussell.com/podcast. Thanks for listening.